For the latest in strategic affairs, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the bell icon for updates.
Hello and welcome to StratNews Global. This week, the meeting between President Xi Jinping and his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin has everyone discussing the outcome and its implications for the world order or the world disorder that we are witnessing currently. What are the fallout for India and what does it mean for international relations down this decade is the subject of this week's Simply Nitin. I'm Nitin Gokhale. So, Xi Jinping went to Moscow for a 3-day visit to have detailed discussions with his good friend Vladimir Putin. Much of the commentary this week in international newspapers, international think tanks, or even the broadcast media revolves around the outcome of the meeting between these two leaders. Xi Jinping, fresh from his appointment for the unprecedented third term as China's supreme leader, and Putin, under siege because of the way the war or the special operation in Ukraine has gone, has meant that there was a bit of speculation about how Putin will receive Xi Jinping and how Xi Jinping will behave in Moscow. Will he behave as a superior power, as a more powerful leader of a nation that is on the ascendant? And Putin will behave as a supplicant or as trying to get China's support going forward, because that's the only support he's getting from one of the world's leading powers. But at the end of it, when a joint statement was issued and when the body language, the kind of telecasting of the images from those meetings came out, it became clear that Xi Jinping has decided to double down on Russia, has decided to take on the West, especially the United States of America, along with Russia, by portraying the West and its leader, the US, as the main threat to the world order, and has also now decided that this is the best way to take on the hegemony of the West or the Western allies led by the United States of America. The dozen agreements that were signed are nothing extraordinary. They were the usual agreements signed between two nations, from trade to technology to energy to propaganda. The Russians and the Chinese have predictably signed more than a dozen agreements, and together they have decided to take on the rest of the world. So also Xi Jinping has said that a peace proposal which he has shared with President Putin is workable, and perhaps the war in Ukraine, or as Putin likes to call it, the special operations in Ukraine, can be called off if the West agrees to it and West starts accepting the terms and the conditions that have been put forward by Xi Jinping on behalf of Putin. But what was more noticeable there was the convergence of interest between these two countries. They were not best of friends, nearly 5 decades ago. In the late 60s, early 70s, Russia and China were, or then Soviet Union, were seen as rivals. They had fought a war in the late 60s. But clearly the circle has now been completed, where Soviet Union, which was the superior power, the bigger power in those years, and its successor Russia has had to become a secondary power or a junior partner to a China that is more powerful militarily, economically, technologically. And the outcome of all that is that China now knows that it can get what it wants from Russia in exchange for support for taking on the West. That's where we are today. And as we go forward, one of the things that looks to be inevitable now is the fragmentation of the world order, or the world disorder is upon us. On the one hand, you have China, Russia, deep friendship, in partnership which was described as no limits partnership in 2022. And on the other, you have several alliances that the Americans are trying to stitch together and make them effective. So you have the Quad, which consists of the US, Australia, Japan and India. Then you have the AUKUS, which is Australia, UK and US, which is a military alliance, which also has a very strong, I would say, component where military hardware and technology is shared by these three countries. Then there is the recent rapprochement between Japan and Korea, where they have decided to let go of the past, which was bitter. And this should worry the Chinese, if not the Russians. And there is also the global South, the leadership of which India aspires to, and is trying its best to balance all these several alliances and minilaterals and bilaterals that are emerging out of the current chaos brought about by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The reality is that today we are witnessing an emergence of a multipolar world, where it is easy for powers like China and Russia to break the hegemony of the West, which has been there since the end of World War II, and make sure that the balance of power is retained, and the balance of power doesn't tilt very heavily in favor of the Americans. That's the outcome of the recent summit between Xi Jinping and Putin. But that puts India into a very difficult position. On the face of it, India will be now more under pressure to align with the Western alliance, because while its relationship with Russia remains robust and its dependence on defense hardware from Russia is still substantial, India will have to weigh its options very carefully, because Russia's strongest partner now is China, which has now become India's challenge number one, replacing Pakistan in the minds of decision makers, thankfully. And therefore, this entire equation between India, Russia and China will be watched very carefully by the leaders the world over. The major global powers will be watching which way India swings, or India will still try and balance the requirements of its national interest when it comes to choosing sides on a case-by-case basis. So, there was a reference, of course, to another grouping or alliance that can be beneficial to India, and that is the RIC, Russia, India, China triangular kind of a compact that has been lying dormant for some time. There is always SCO, which is dominated by Russia and China, and India is the chair of SCO. So therefore, the challenge for Indian decision makers, Indian leadership, has become more acute following the summit in Moscow. At the same time, one of the other fallouts is that G20 has suddenly become irrelevant, because looking ahead, when the G20 summit takes place in India later this year, there is a possibility that neither Xi Jinping nor Putin come to G20 summit, but they'll come to the SCO summit together to India, because G20 in their view is a Western-led, Western-dominated alliance, and therefore the fragmentation of G20 compact or the alliance or the grouping seems inevitable now, or at least its ineffectiveness will become very apparent at the end of the year. The G20 nations, given the fact that Today the challenges are more acute on the economic front, on the energy front. India will have to make sure that its national interests are protected, and therefore it will always have to put national interest above principles, and see to it that it doesn't get sidelined, it doesn't get cut out from potential realignments that are taking place across the world. The Ukraine war is not yet over, and India will have to be very, very careful in how it maneuvers its relationship with major global powers. That has been a success so far since February 2022 when the Ukraine war started. But will the same approach be beneficial? Will the same approach bring similar outcomes for India? Remains to be seen. But the fact is that the joint statement by Russia and China makes sure or makes it very clear that they are in for a long-term partnership, a deeper partnership than ever before, which will, at the face of it, spell big trouble for India, and therefore India will have to be nimble-footed. India will have to be constantly on its guard and play by the ear when it comes to international relations, and especially its relationship with Russia on the one hand and with China on the other. How does it maneuver it? What it happens? We'll have to wait and watch. But this is an inflection point, and if you really see what the parting shot that President Putin had for Xi Jinping will make it clear that where is the challenge coming from. If you look at the clip which has gone viral on social media and otherwise, where Putin is saying goodbye to Xi Jinping, he says in Russian, which has been translated by the people who know Russian, and it says, to quote Putin, "Right now there are changes, the likes of which we haven't seen for 100 years. And we are the ones driving those changes together." It was Xi Jinping who told Putin. So clearly he now feels superior, he feels more powerful, and Putin is nodding his head and saying, yes, that is the case. He's at the door of Kremlin when he's saying goodbye to Xi Jinping. That, I think, is a historical moment which will be remembered for long in the coming 50 years or so, where we are seeing in front of our eyes the realignment and the changing world order going by what we are witnessing, what we are reading, what we are analyzing from this summit in Moscow. I wanted to flag this important event in recent history in international relations and foreign policy, and that's why it's a bit different Simply Nitin this week. Do watch it, comment on it, give feedback, and of course, subscribe to our YouTube channel and our other social media handles if you haven't done that. If you have done it already, spread the word, tell your friends, acquaintances and family that here is one channel you can watch because it concentrates in a very focused way on a very niche subject of strategic affairs, foreign policy and defense. So we will continue to bring you these discussions, these topics. Continue to watch StratNews Global. Until the next time, it's goodbye.
And we realize that the economy of space sector cannot grow unless private participation is there. And where are the business opportunities? And business eye is naturally the private, never with the government. Space sector has been government funded. Now it's no longer going to be government funded. The funds will come from financial institutions, it will come from investors, and it will also from companies.